Prosperous Empath Kat here. You know, one term that never came up in the world of coaching when I first started coaching back in 2014 was somatics. Now, I have really come to have a huge shift in my coaching practice and philosophy around incorporating more of the somatic work in my coaching approach, but this isn't something that I was really steeped in or trained in. And if that resonates, and if you don't even know what I mean, then you're really going to enjoy today's conversation because we're going to talk a lot about this theme of somatic work and how so much of what we grow and learn and become more deeply self-aware about intellectually, how we can only go so far when we know something in our heads, but not in our hearts and bodies, because it's truly when we have an embodied knowing of something we only previously intellectually understand that we become that future version of ourselves, that we make that shift, that we experience that profound transformation that is the core of coaching work. And today's guest is someone who talks about somatics a lot. She lives and breathes it, and I always love the somatic lens and conversations and reflections that she offers. And it's someone who I have deep admiration and respect and just adore. I'm thrilled to have Rebecca Arnold join me on the show today. She's joined me on a prior podcast talking about her word of the year. And today we're going to dive into her debut book, The Rooted Renegade. I feel really honored to have Rebecca on the show today to chat more about her book and some of her principles and lessons in writing the book, because I've been along for the ride from the beginning. Rebecca is a longstanding member of our UNBOUNDED Mastermind, and I've had a bird's eye view of just watching her hold this book and the publishing journey with so much reverence and intentionality and excellence. The book is just filled to the brim with actionable practices and tools and resources. It's just a really beautiful, action-oriented book that I know you will enjoy. So by all means, head to the show notes and grab your own copy. And in the meantime, let me share with you a little bit more about Rebecca. Rebecca is an attorney. She's a professional certified coach credentialed through the International Coaching Federation, and she's the founder of Root Coaching and Consulting, a holistic leadership company firm for ambitious professionals. She's worked with 100+ leaders in the fields of education, medicine, law, academia, and social impact organizations. She's an attorney by training and has collaborated with organizations from Google and Harvard to top 100 law firms and K through 12 school districts. She's known as a straight-talking, big-hearted coach, and I completely agree. Her new book, The Rooted Renegade, Transform Within, Disrupt the Status Quo, and Unleash Your Legacy, offers a clear path with tools to holistic success for ambitious professionals, whether you're starting out at a career turning point or on the brink of burnout. In addition, Rebecca is a dog mom, a mom to teens, and a spunky wife. To access her essence, she practices yoga, meditates, uses Reiki, walks by the ocean, cooks without recipes, sits in coffee shops, and laughs like hell. Today, we are going to dive into some of the wisdom and some of Rebecca's own professional and personal experiences that really sourced some of the inspiration within. She dives into her experience with deep burnout after leaving what she had thought was her dream job and how she healed her nervous system after falling apart emotionally and physically. We'll discuss the importance of grounding your body, lighting your soul, and building healthy relationships with other people, and how she stopped holding anger and disappointment in her body and learned how to process the difficult relationship with her father. I will say that that story about her father is one that was really close to my own heart, and the vulnerability and intimacy that Rebecca shared in that relationship was, just deeply touching. And I think we all have relationships like that with people in our own lives who we don't talk about, or we don't do that deep work to feel and grieve and release. And so I really appreciate Rebecca's capacity to share in such a beautifully open-hearted and raw and revealing way. Finally, we're going to close on how you too can learn to trust your body and become attuned to its needs instead of always pushing through. If you'd like to spend a little bit more time in person with yours truly, come join me virtually for our next upcoming non-networking power hour. It's our monthly gathering for empathpreneurs to come and bring meaningful requests for support and be supported by a like-minded, values-aligned community of peers and empathpreneurs. The next one coming up is on Monday, June 10th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you can't join us then, come join us in our online community. It's my beautiful, previously private community for my mastermind that we've recently opened up for values-aligned empathpreneurs to come and connect and collaborate. I'll drop the link for both in the show notes. And with that, let's dive into today's conversation. I really hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath Podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm delighted to be here.
This feels like such a monumental conversation because I feel like I've been talking with you about your book for so many months and years, and now it's coming to fruition. It's here, really. And I'm so excited to have this conversation about your book, The Rooted Renegade, Transform Within, Disrupt the Status Quo, and Unleash Your Legacy. And by way of getting us started, I gave you a little bit of a heads up notice, but I'd love for you to lead us in an exercise, to lead me in an exercise from your book as a way to get us connected and maybe in our own bodies, which is a lot of what I loved most about your book.
I am happy to do that and excited to do that. I think one of the missing pieces for a lot of us is the embodied component. So I'm excited to be leading you and your listeners through this. It's a very simple exercise. And so all that you're going to start doing is imagine that you are stressed and don't want to be. And you probably don't even have to imagine that hard. So you might notice as you tune in that your shoulders are creeping up towards your ears, or that your neck and head are pushed forward and down. Your jaw might be set tight. Your butt might even feel clenched. That's mine. Or whichever is your unique physical manifestation of stress. So just allow yourself to tune in to any of those signals of stress that are typically yours. Now I invite you to do just the opposite. Roll your shoulders down and back. Adjust your neck and head upright. Wiggle your jaw to loosen it.
That's mine.
Yeah. And relax your butt. This one's a little tricky. So if you clench your butt first, really intentionally, and then relax it, it's a little easier sometimes to relax it then. Notice the nuances of body positioning that are your unique physical signatures of peace. It might be that your chest feels broader and more relaxed. It might be that your shoulders are down. It might be that your eyes are soft. Whatever it is, just notice. You likely immediately feel calmer, even if not one thought changes. All that we did here was do what was stressful in your body, and then what felt relaxed in your body. And so anytime you notice those stress signatures popping up, that tightness, you can just do the opposite and relax and release them. If you start to think fearful or stressful thoughts, again, after you do this, your body will slingshot right back to its stressful stance. And that's fine. That's what your body does naturally. The opportunity and invitation is just to simply relax and release any of those areas that feel tight. And that's it.
I had this experience when we were reading the book for our book club in the UNBOUNDED Mastermind that it was just so nice to connect with the body in the moment, because I feel like so often when we're reading a book, especially about personal development and leadership, it's often a place for us to default to the intellectual knowing. And so to have an invitation, which your book provided countless invitations to practice in the moment and really apply what we're reading about in really while we're reading it, it was such a nice, more of an interactive read than most of the reads.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard that from a lot of folks that it's like once they start to dig in, they feel like one person said it was like a novel, except I'm the one changing throughout instead of the main character because of this felt sense of using these exercises and really practicing what's happening instead of just theoretically or intellectually, as you said.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm happy that that's where we started. It feels like a nice way to even just ground together to really have this conversation from an embodied place. Because that's what we're going to be talking about a lot on our podcast today. So, you've come on the podcast before, but for those of our listeners who haven't yet tuned into your prior episode, I'd love for you to share your pronouns, and a little bit about your story.
Sure. My pronouns are she, her, and thank you for asking. So I came to coaching through I like to refer to it as a colossal burnout experience that had all the bits, dramatically leaving my job, falling apart emotionally, physically. It was a really painful experience that I had to do a lot of work to rewire and change the narrative on and do some really deep work around. And when I came out of that experience, what was really hard was that I burnt out from what I thought was my dream job. And so when that happened, there was a complete vacuum of purpose. I was like, I just achieved the thing I had been working so hard for. And now that I don't have that, what am I going to do with myself? And how am I going to show up in a way that I can impact people's lives for the better and not burn out in the process? And so I did a lot of inner work and reflection and came to coaching, which felt like a way to integrate a lot of my interests in personal development, psychology, law, social impact, and all of that into one practice that really lights my soul ablaze and gets me thrilled to come to my desk and work with clients. So that's a short snippet. I know you know many, many stories, both from our coaching work together and from reading this book. But that to me really was the impetus for pursuing coaching, and the thing that I come back to again and again with my clients of really wanting to support them to stay in their current roles where they're making huge impact without compromising their well-being and their priorities outside of work.
It actually makes me wonder how that's connected with your inspiration for writing the book, right? How was that experience of of burnout to finding your own soul's work, connected with writing the Rooted Renegade?
Yeah. So the book, I just want to give a quick kind of overall framework for the book so that I can answer this to help people kind of ground a little bit and how it's broken out. The first section is about internal peace. How do you ground your body and develop more internal resilience? The second piece is around how to cultivate existential peace, how to look at what makes your soul blissful. What are you here to do? What brings you fulfillment? Where are your values? All of that. And then the third part is relational peace, both with yourself and with other people. So when I look at burnout, so there are systemic causes of burnout, of course. There are organizations that are demanding too much of employees and not keeping pace with having organizations not keep pace with how they need to really support people comprehensively. And then I think there are also these internal components of burnout, which are your mindsets that break you down, the not being aligned in terms of the values at work, not knowing how to calm your nervous system. And so when I look at how the book is broken down, I find components of my own burnout in each of those. So I wasn't doing a great job recognizing the internal toll of stress and taking care of my body effectively and knowing how to metabolize stress well. I also was feeling misaligned with the values at work, and I wasn't really present to that and the toll that it took. And then I was having a lot of relationship challenges with other people, and my relationship with myself was like garbage. I beat myself up all day long. And so when you zoom out and look at burnout, it's sort of like, of course I burnt out. How could I not? It's almost like I was going 80 miles an hour with the wheel kind of off the track. So it was no surprise when I look back on it, but in the moment I wasn't aware of what was going on. And so I see it as really integrated with my story in the book.
So something I've shared with this with you already, but something I really appreciate from your book is how many exercises you integrate throughout every aspect of these three parts of peace that you refer to. And I'm wondering, like, when you were on your own journey of burnout, how many of these tools did you have access to? Or how many did you, in hindsight, realize they would have made a difference? Like, how did you craft these three components? And how did you adapt practices for all of them? Because really, I'm excited for our listeners to read your book, but there's dozens and dozens of exercises in your book. It's kind of like what did one of our colleagues call it? A coach's
a nightstand Bible.
A nightstand Bible. It's amazing.
Okay. So there are a lot of ways to tackle this. So I'm trying to think of the best one. Because the framework actually emerged as I was writing it. I didn't start from a framework. And that is very ADHD me, which is like, put a bunch of stuff out there and see what kind of shakes out. And then in retrospect, I always have a duh. Of course, this is the framework, but I'm the pantser, not outliner. When you think about when novelists talk about writing, there are some folks that outline the whole thing, and there are other folks that just write and then it emerges. I'm the latter. I had very, very few of these practices when I experienced burnout. Very few. I mean, I've been in therapy for years, but the kinds of practices that are in the book, I developed through my own coaching with clients, practices that I found were helpful to them when I was doing one-on-one work, things I've been exposed to along the way. So I'm kind of like I make exercises very easy. You could ask me for 10 exercises on some topic and I could just machine drop them out for you. That's how my brain works. And so it was not hard for me once I understood what I wanted folks to get out of this book to generate practices based on the experiences I had with clients, things I do for myself, and things I picked up along the way. And these were all things I wish so badly that I had when I was going through burnout, because I felt really alone and didn't know where to turn or what to do. I mean, therapy was great, but it was really just processing instead of moving forward and understanding more tools I could take with me.
Well, I think that really highlights something that I was struck by in reading your book, because you share a story in your book, which I've already talked to you about privately, but it's like the role that forgiveness played in your life and the role that forgiveness helped heal your relationship with your dad.
Mhm.
And when you share that story in the book, like you occur like you had so much perspective to be able to process it in real time. And
Mhm.
so I guess I'm wondering, like, is that true? Is that how it was for you? Did you feel like this forgiveness work that you did was with your father was self-inspired? Was it self-necessitated? Um,
Mhm.
what was the real motivation?
Yeah. So in the story, in the book, I tell the story of my dad who had ALS and, and he was diagnosed with narcissism and bipolar disorder and caused a lot of havoc in our family throughout my life. And I had worked for years on my relationship with him in therapy and had made a little bit of progress, but there were so much I was holding on to, so much anger and resentment and disappointment in my body that I was just unable to let go of. And he basically had a timeline that was very short remaining. Like we knew that his ALS was progressing very fast. And I knew he probably only had a few months left to live. And I was deeply committed because of my values to say goodbye to him in a deeply felt way that wasn't out of obligation, but was out of my appreciation for who he had been when I was little. That was really what I could lock onto in terms of what I appreciated about him. And so I just decided I was going to undertake this months long forgiveness process to go through every single thing I was hanging on to about him and do the process is a little bit elaborate, but I went through each one of them, remembered what it was like, remembered my emotional experiences with it, and then offered him forgiveness and did some embodied practices to release the energy of that. So it took me, I mean, literally months because I went through a couple incidents each day because it was emotionally exhausting. But by the end of it, I felt like I had come to a really different place and perspective with him where I could say goodbye to him from the deepest heartfelt space I could access and appreciation for who he had been in his best moments and send him out in a way that felt really aligned for who I want to be in the world and what I want to create. So it was not an easy process, but I am so proud of myself looking back on it and so grateful to have had the tenacity to go through this process that was not easy and leave him in a way that I felt honored the best parts of him.
And I really appreciate you even speaking to the 3 parts of peace when you talk about that forgiveness journey. I heard the existential piece because it was a value commitment that you had, and the relational piece. And then I hear the embodiment work that you did to be able to move through it.
Absolutely. I wish I'd thought of that when I was reading the book, Kat. You're
Yeah,
right. It does encapsulate each of those.
it
But
really
even
does.
when I remember when I called him to say goodbye, I read him this letter that I had written after I'd done all this forgiveness work. And I sat on my meditation cushion. I had candles lit. I wanted to create a stage that felt like, even though I was over the phone, it was tapped into something much deeper.
I'm really struck by that because um, I think for my listeners and me, forgiveness is something that we know we should do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we know it's as much for ourselves as it is for the other person. And I think a lot of us, and I think you and I have chatted about this before, and I think we fall into different camps, but I have had to do a lot of work over the years to connect with anger, to
Mm-hmm.
emote anger, to give myself permission to express anger. And I'm just struck by how important of a step that is in doing
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness work
Mm-hmm.
and giving ourselves real full permission to express all the rage, all the anger that we might feel. And, I shared with you that really that story of yours, it brought up a member in my family who's caused a lot of harm. And I've done a lot of forgiveness work over the years over that relationship. And in reading your book and in hearing the story this time, because I'd heard parts of it before, it struck me that I probably have more anger to release.
Mm-hmm.
Even more than I
Mm-hmm.
knew I have capacity to feel and to name and to emote.
Yeah, I think especially for people who are been socialized as women and other marginalized identities, like we've heard our entire lives to think about other people, to be considerate, to be thoughtful, all of these things. And anger isn't often given a seat at the table. And it's a doorway to all of this other transformation that awaits. But it's almost like a plug in the dike. It's like until you release the anger part of it, it's hard to get to the goodies on the other side of it. Not that anger isn't its own goodie. I mean, I happen to delight in a little bit of anger, rage walking, all kinds of things.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love how really there's no value judgment towards anger or sadness, that they are extremely valid and they serve a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And as empaths, we can so often internalize that they're bad or wrong, or that we shouldn't feel that way, which is really just preventing our own internal peace.
Yeah, I think if we think about like any emotions we're judging as wrong, stifle the range of emotions that we can have access to. And if we want to be fully expressed, we got to have the range. Like there's a reason there is the range. And so sometimes when I'm resisting an emotion, I like to think about this, like I'm blocking an aspect of my life that I would otherwise have access to.
It makes me think of guilt, which I feel like is a similarly, it's like an emotion and it's like a similar cousin, right? Maybe like second cousins. And you say, you write about guilt, and I want to read it. You say, guilt is the result of socialization that wrongs you for expressing your needs and creating a life-giving relationship with yourself. For the record, taking a stand for yourself in the face of this socialization is countercultural rebellion at its finest.
Right on.
It's so true, right? For all those of us who, again, internalize that we shouldn't ask for what we need, that we should just squash our own thoughts and feelings and body sensations. We create this felt sense of guilt in our body, which again prevents this peace that so many of us are craving, and perhaps now more than ever, because I feel like the pandemic really illuminated that level of dissatisfaction with ourselves and our own experiences of peace. How much was the pandemic connected with your motivation for writing the book?
So the book started from videos that I made in the early stage of the pandemic to support people with coaching strategies and techniques that I thought people could use when they were in their houses. And after a couple of months, I transcribed them and I realized how much content there was that could be really supportive for folks. And it ended up, when I looked through the transcripts and all of that, I realized, so this originally started as a post-pandemic guide to reinvention. That was the first iteration of this book, because I felt like people had already started having these conversations about how do I want my life to look when the pandemic is gone. And what I realized as I started really sitting with the material is that this notion of rooted peace, with those three aspects of peace, are really the connected to holistic success and what people have been searching for a long time, but haven't had a name for. And so coming out of the pandemic, I was like, we need to start having a new conversation about what holistic success looks like, what people are creating beyond the quick fixes, like what is underneath people wanting a spa vacation, right? It's like, no judgment, love the spa vacation, yes. And we don't have to feel like we have to escape from our life. Like we can have the spa vacation and also feel like our life is filling us up in all of these various ways. And so it was deeply affected by the pandemic and the life I hope we all create for ourselves, given this sense of mortality that I feel like when we actually connect with what the pandemic was, we are able to connect with that sense of mortality and our need to start now to create the life that we want for ourselves and our families.
Yeah, it does feel like it was an access point to reinvention or
Mm-hmm.
permission to reinvent. So I want to talk about these three levels of peace. So we have rooted peace, which I think
Mm-hmm.
makes sense, right? Like this idea of creating peace with our body, and relational peace, which also feels like something you can really understand, especially in the wake of the loneliness epidemic that so many of us are experiencing, this idea of making peace with ourselves and peace with others. But I want to elaborate on this second component, this component of existential peace, because I just had so many ahas reading it. And I feel like so many people approach coaching at points in their life when they're searching for an experience of existential peace and they may not even know
Mm-hmm.
it. So, what does that mean to you? What does existential peace even mean?
So existential peace, I think about first, I'm going to give you a metaphor and then I will explain in more concrete terms. So it's when you have existential peace, it's like your life feels like puzzle pieces sliding into place. And you're like, things just fit and feel right. And what I mean by that is you are doing work, volunteering, things with your time that feel like this is the thing I was intended to do. This is the legacy that I want to offer. This is my purpose. It can be I pick up trash on the side of the road and love making the places that my neighbors and I go beautiful. It could be running an organization that supports unhoused youth, right? It can run the full gamut. It could be making legacy creating financial holdings to support generations going forward, right? It can be anything. But the idea is that it is so aligned for you. It's almost like your body buzzes when you hit on it. So when I coach someone, I get like hot, physically hot. I start sweating. It's almost like my soul is like, do we swear on here? Or no?
Absolutely.
Your soul is like, fuck yes, this is what I have been waiting for, right? So that's the feeling, whatever it is that does that for you. So that's one piece of it, right? That you're aligned with your purpose and your legacy. The second piece is that you're aligned with your values. So I cited this. This is so dating to me, but I cited this quote from Dirty Dancing, which is nobody puts baby in the corner. And that's how values are, right? If you are eschewing one of your values, they will let it be known. If, for example, if a value of yours is integrity and you're not honoring it, you will stay up at night worrying about something that felt out of integrity. It lets you know. When you experience existential peace, you're feeling in alignment with your most important values. And then you're getting moving, right? You're making moves toward living in alignment with your values, toward your legacy, and also living in accordance with your most simple strengths that come naturally to you and your gift, the thing that is just completely you that you show up with all the time. And so when those pieces are in place, again, things just feel right. So Kat, when you are experiencing existential peace, what do you notice?
I feel intimately connected with people.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly feel like a conduit for spirit. Like when I'm
Mm-hmm.
coaching and I'm present to existential peace, I feel like I'm a conduit for whatever needs to be communicated through me. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
it just flows.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I bet people feel it too when they're in the presence of that with you.
Yeah.
I think about existential peace as this idea that if we were all aligned with whatever the things that bring us existential peace, the most pressing challenges that we're facing in our communities, in our society would be solved, or we'd be moving toward them anyway, because people wouldn't be hiding their gifts. They wouldn't be doing work that isn't really aligned for them. They wouldn't be hiding in cultures, in work cultures, and in situations where their values weren't fully expressed. if you think about the energy wasted with suppression, like suppressing what we really want, suppressing alignment with our values, all of that could be used toward incredible ends to solve our really most challenging problems.
So I noticed something that's coming up for me as you're speaking is this idea that many of the folks who come to me for coaching have already reached like a massive level of professional or entrepreneurial success. And oftentimes the thing that feels missing is not professional. And they may hide behind professional accolades or achievements. And so I guess I'm wondering, is your experience of existential peace that it's always, or does it tend towards the professional realm? Or does existential peace present itself in other areas of life?
I think for most of my clients, it's showing up in a work context, but it doesn't have to. So if someone, for example, has been longing to be a parent for a long time and feel like that is aligned with their purpose and how they want to show up and the life they want to have, and that is not in place yet, or they want to have a relationship that is deeply fulfilling on a soul level, things are going to feel out of place and amiss. So for your folks who've achieved a lot of professional success, I would be curious about, like, is their job actually lighting them up on a daily level? Or is it the idea of their work? Like, is it the status, which is fine if status is a value of theirs, but is it the status and the things that come along with the work, or is it their day-to-day that is actually activating them and they're kind of thrilled there? And it can be, right? It can be that they're thrilled to be at their work and that it's totally working for them, and they have this other piece that's missing. And sometimes I find with my clients who are at the upper echelons of their organization or field, they like the idea of it, but not the day-to-day of what their job actually entails. And that's for them the missing piece, along with an outside component that might not be there either. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, I think I'm trying on different clients' experiences to see how that fits. And something that comes to mind is maybe a little more nuanced than what you shared, but it's like the idea of, I think many of us really connect with our work or the heart of our work, and then we get distracted or challenged by so many of the administrative or financial or logistical or people management components that we can become really disconnected from what we really love about our work.
Yeah, I see that too. There's I've worked with school superintendents and assistant superintendents who are like, I got into education to be in the classroom and I haven't seen kids in weeks. So it's all become meetings about kids, but not the kids themselves. And when they start going into the classrooms regularly as a practice, they reconnect with why they're there in the first place, and they feel way more grounded, committed, and motivated. So I do think that people can lose that in the day-to-day. Absolutely.
What part of the book was the hardest for you to write?
So there's a part where I talk about this, like, experiencing a panic attack and sort of an approach for rewiring sort of the narrative of an experience like that, of a dark night of the soul. That was tricky because I was really writing in great detail about that experience. And I think because I'm so embodied by nature and visual, I can put myself back in a moment very easily. And so I had to do some work on, as I was doing that part, on like grounding, breathing, writing a little bit, taking a break, doing other exercises in the book, coming back to it, because it is these experiences that are kind of stuck in us, in our consciousness, take a lot of energy to work through. And so that section, I think, took me the longest to really work through, because I was still doing some residual work on it as I was writing it. And so I kept working on that section until I felt like the residual work had faded to the degree I needed it to. It's never going to be completely gone, but It felt like there was a lot of healing in the writing itself, as was the writing about my dad, and that whole experience was a similar envisioning it, experiencing it somatically. So there was just a lot of healing baked into the process of writing this book, which I really appreciated, because my hope is that that's imbued throughout, that kind of healing that's available. Like I've walked that too, both in my lived experiences and also in the writing of it.
I love that example of the being triggered on the stage, because I feel like you really speak to the embodiment of what rooted peace looks like in your day-to-day life. This idea of not stepping over your own somatic response, not trying to muscle through or intellectualize yourself out of feeling a certain way. And I just love how you shared that, because I think so many of us, we don't stop. We don't slow down when we're having a reaction or a response or feeling too much. We just push through. And I mean, I certainly know that's been my default. I used to have this boss when I lived in Santo Domingo. He used to say, Katy, tú eres una máquina de mujer. Like, Kat, you are a woman machine. And it was such an accolade for me, like this idea that I could just push my way through anything. So much so that I got bronchitis and was out of work on bed rest for 3 weeks. And it's something that so many of us have to learn, this idea of attuning to our body and trusting the messaging that our body's telling us. And so I'm wondering what your personal journey was to become so attuned to your body's needs, because it feels like it's so naturally integrated at this point.
Yes, it has not always been so. It's really interesting because when I was young, like in early high school, a lot of my anxiety manifested somatically. So I wouldn't realize that I was anxious, but I had a horrible stomach ache, and I went through the whole GI diagnostic gauntlet and nothing was wrong. And it took a long time for people to pick up that it was like anxiety and depression actually that was causing that. And I feel like this integration piece is the upside of that somatization. Like, I think that's a natural default and very attuned internally. And so when things are going too fast, or there's too much stress and things are out of alignment, I feel it very quickly internally, and now know what to do with that. When I was younger, I didn't know what to do with it. It just felt very much out of control. But now I feel like it's a superpower, because in my coaching, I'm very connected to when my client is speaking, what's happening internally, and even very small nuances of that then I can reflect back and ask my client if they're noticing anything like that, or if there's anything happening for them in that area. And so it's been a journey of sort of like toggling between paying too much attention, quote unquote, too much attention to my physical sensations and having them take me over, to kind of dialing it down to a degree that I can then start to parse out and understand and work with. And so I think Reiki has been a huge help in doing that, like my own Reiki practice, to sort of look at the connection between physical sensation, energy, and intuition. And doing yoga has supported that, doing meditation has supported that, and seeing the impact, like sort of normalizing that it's okay to have these sensations and reflect them in coaching, has helped me recognize the power of them instead of feeling like that's a problem to be solved or something like that.
Yeah, I love how they occur like light bulbs, like perhaps like light bulbs for your mind to catch up with your body.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm imagining that embodiment and rooted peace can really support in growth and locking in change. And so I'm wondering what your experience of that is.
Yeah. So this is one of my very favorite things about embodiment, because I work with super bright clients who are want to parse out all the mindset and everything, which is glorious. Love that. And what I often find is some very small somatic practicing or experiencing of something immediately locks it in. So let's do an example for your listeners, if that works.
Beautiful.
Just list 3 things you feel good about having accomplished, right? It might be an award you got. It might be a position you have. It might be a moment as a parent. It could be a moment on the stage, anything, right? An athletic accomplishment. Just take a moment and jot them down. Okay. Kat, what's one of yours? Something you're proud of?
My marriage.
Great. Okay. So we can totally be like, awesome, great marriage. Now, what I want to invite you to do is like, feel in your body, allow your body to occupy that pride in your marriage. So if you hold your body in a way that shows your pride in your marriage, how would you do that?
I feel my eyes sparkling and the corners of my lips going up.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I saw your chest expand a little bit. You sat back and sat a little higher. And I see your face getting a little like delightfully rosy.
That's the Irish rosacea, Rebecca.
It's
but I hear you.
Right now. Well, so if we think about the intellectual, like I'm proud of my marriage, that's great. And if we combine it with, I'm proud of my marriage in the somatic sense, right? You're sitting upright, your mouth is turned up, you have a sparkle in your eyes. And I asked you later today to think about your pride in your marriage. You would likely start to like, your face would start to do the thing it did when you thought about how proud you were of your marriage. It's like an immediate access point to it. So if I'm working with a client who's feeling like I'm feeling really run down at work, and they start to kind of hunch over and they start to hang their head down, well, reflect on that. Okay, now do the opposite. Sit up, bounce in your chair a little bit, right? Raise your head. They'll be like, oh, I'm feeling actually kind of good right now. Nothing changed in their mindset. They just changed their physical posture. So if you're stuck at work and you want to access a little more energy, just bounce in your seat, hold your head upright, and decide what you want to do. So it's like a very quick way to change your current state into the state that you want it to be, and to lock in some changes that you're working on in your mindset.
What a fun hack.
Mm-hmm. Totally. My clients are often like, hold on, how come no one ever told me this before?
I can absolutely imagine that. Well, as we're nearing the end, I mean, I'm taking so many gems from your book, and I'm really excited for our listeners to tune in, and we'll of course include the links where they can buy a copy in the show notes. But I'm curious if there's a tool from your book that that applies to being a prosperous empath, if there's really a tool or an exercise that has really supported you in thriving as an empath.
So there's a section on clearing energetic crud that I think is really important, because as empaths, we are like charcoal of society. That's how I think about it. We're constantly clearing other people's crap, which is a delightful service, however unpaid. And we often don't have any training or capacity in how you get rid of it, right? So you're walking around just constantly absorbing all this stuff. So it's really important to know what is your way of getting rid of that. It could be the rage walk, which is one of my favorites. It could be shaking, right? Shaking out your head, shaking out your arms, allowing your whole body to move. It could be breath practice, whatever it is that works for you. But that part walks you through some different options. And I think as an empath, it is really a vital part of self-care to figure out how to clear energetic crud. So that's the thing that I would say is important, whatever is your strategy.
Gorgeous. Yeah, I hear you speaking to energetic boundaries. How do we put on our Teflon?
Yep. And then for the bits that sneak through the cracks, how do you flick them off and get rid of them so they're not sitting in your belly all day?
Awesome. Love it. Rebecca, I'm so excited for your book to come to the world. I'm so honored to have been a part of your journey, and congratulations on birthing such a beautiful creative expression of you.
Thank you. I'm so excited for people to have this host of tools to support them along the way.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.